History books tell us the Nazis wanted to conquer the world with steel and fire. What they don't always mention is their obsession with the supernatural. From the snow-capped peaks of Tibet to the shifting sands of Egypt, Hitler's elite Ahnenerbe unit was hunting for power that wasn't of this world. Today, we're uncovering 5 ancient secrets the Nazis desperately tried to find, and what happened to those who got too close. The Holy Grail. In the 1930s, an unlikely trio, an openly gay left-leaning historian, a group of Nazis, and an ancient medieval text came together in a bizarre quest that sounds like the plot of a summer blockbuster, or perhaps the setup to a darkly comedic joke. But this was no fiction. Their convergence was part of a serious, albeit twisted, pursuit of one of the most revered and elusive Christian artifacts, the Holy Grail. In 1924, at just 20 years old, Otto Rahn earned his degree in history. A brilliant scholar, Rahn's intelligence was overshadowed only by his obsession with locating the Holy Grail. The Grail, supposedly the cup Christ used at the Last Supper, has long been debated among historians, many questioning whether it ever existed. But Rahn was certain it had survived into the 20th century, waiting to be found. Believing that lines from the medieval poem Parsifal held clues to the location of the Grail, Rahn embarked on his first expedition to the former strongholds of the Cathars in southern France, a now extinct branch of Christianity. Although he didn't find the Grail, he published a book detailing his search. This book caught the attention of Heinrich Himmler himself. Himmler, the fanatical leader of the SS, was as obsessed with the Grail as Rahn. Upon reading Rahn's account, Hitler decided that this brilliant historian, despite his open opposition to Nazi ideology, might be the man to finally unearth this sacred relic. Driven by his desperation to find the Grail, Rahn overlooked the dangers of aligning with the Nazis and joined the party. In the early 1930s, the SS funded his next expedition to the Cathar ruins, but once again, Rahn's search ended in failure. He did, however, write another book detailing his journey. While Himmler appreciated the book, he was furious at the failure and reassigned Rahn to a grueling post as a guard at Dachau concentration camp in 1937. 2 years later, after resigning from the party, Rahn's frozen body was found in the Alps, the tragic end likely self-inflicted. But the story doesn't end with Rahn. Himmler's obsession with the Holy Grail persisted, driven by a bizarre belief that Jesus, a Jewish man born to Jewish parents, was actually Aryan. In 1940, Himmler traveled to Montserrat Abbey near Barcelona, accompanied by SS guards. He interrogated the monks about any knowledge they might have of the Grail's whereabouts. Convinced that the lines of Parsifal pointed to the Grail's location at Montserrat, Himmler pressed the monks, who ultimately dismissed his theories. After making a donation to repair a local well, likely an attempt to influence Spain's fascist dictator Francisco Franco to join the war against England and France, Himmler left empty-handed. The Nazis never found the Holy Grail, and its location remains a mystery to this day, if it ever existed. Extant China. All extend China in the middle of Germany's Teutoburg forest. Towering sandstone pillars known as the Extant China pierce the sky, casting long shadows over the ancient landscape. Some say they served as a prehistoric observatory, while others believed they were sacred ground for ancient Germanic tribes. It wasn't until the early 20th century, however, that the Extant China captured the attention of a darker force, the Ahnenerbe. Founded in 1935 by Heinrich Himmler, the Ahnenerbe was a branch of the SS dedicated to the study and promotion of what the Nazi regime considered to be the ancient history and cultural heritage of the Aryan race. It aimed to validate the Nazis' ideological claims of Aryan supremacy by conducting research in archaeology, anthropology, and folklore. But their work was far from objective. The Ahnenerbe systematically distorted history to fit the Nazi worldview, and in 1935, the Exton would become one of the most infamous ancient sites manipulated by the Ahnenerbe. Seizing upon centuries-old legends, Himmler and his team of scholars claimed that the stones were once the site of Irminsul, a sacred pillar or world tree venerated by the ancient Saxons and destroyed by Charlemagne during his Christianization campaigns around 772 AD. They proposed that the carvings on the surface of the rocks told the story of the destruction of Irminsul. The Saxons, a Germanic tribe known for their strength, independence, and resistance to Christianization, were viewed by the Nazis as ancestors of the Aryan race and exemplars of racial purity and the warrior spirit. The Ahnenerbe's mission in Exton was to reclaim the site as a symbol of Aryan spiritual heritage, reinforcing their narrative of an unbroken and pure Germanic lineage. This false narrative became so powerful that the Nazi youth would sing Saxon hymns at the site on Himmler's birthday. But the true history of the Exton is far more complex and mysterious. These ancient rocks, formed over 70 million years ago, have seen millennia of human activity. Archaeological evidence suggests that nomadic hunters sought shelter here around 10,000 BC, and Christian monks may have begun living in carved-out hubs in the 8th or 9th century. However, much of the written evidence for the site's use during the Middle Ages was lost during World War II. To what remains is a relief carving depicting Jesus' descent from the cross, carved into the stone sometime in the 12th century. The site would later be variously used as a hermitage and a hideout for bandits, before the rise of Romantic nationalism in the 1800s reignited interest in the ancient history of the site. Today, the supposed connection to the ancient Saxons and the legend of Irminsul is largely dismissed, yet the narrative crafted by the Ahnenerbe endures, even now. Modern Nazi sympathizers and pagans are drawn to the Exton by the myth that continues to surround the witches of Karelia. In the summer of 1936, deep within the ancient forest of Karelia, a Nazi-backed expedition set out on a mission shrouded in myth and superstition. This remote wilderness, straddling the border between Finland and Russia, was a place where time stood still, a land of sorcerers and ancient traditions. Leading the expedition was Ilja van Grunhagen, a young Finnish nobleman fascinated by the region's legendary sorcery. His interest had attracted the attention of Heinrich Himmler, who believed Karelia held lost Aryan knowledge that could strengthen the Nazi regime. Grunhagen's task was to record the chants and incantations of Karelia's elders, those who still practice the pagan customs of their ancestors. Accompanied by Fritz Bose, a Nazi musicologist, and a Finnish illustrator, the team embarked on the journey, armed with a new piece of technology, the magnetophone, a prototype tape recorder. Their journey led them to remote villages where they encountered people who seemed to belong to another time. In the woods near Suoru, they met Timo Lipita, an elderly man with snowy hair and a distant gaze. Lipita had never seen a train nor attended school, living a life untouched by modern civilization. Persuaded by Grunhagen, Lipita sang ancient songs passed down through generations, conjuring a creation story that echoed the Kalevala, Finland's national epic. Bose meticulously recorded these performances, capturing every haunting note. To him, these songs were more than folklore. They were echoes of a distant past, hints at the origins of the Aryan race that the Nazis sought. The most mysterious figure of their journey awaited them near Salmi in a small hut. Grunhagen encountered Miron Aku, a 92-year-old soothsayer known as a witch. Villagers had warned him to stay away, but Grunhagen was undeterred. When he found her, she was picking mushrooms, her frail figure at one with the forest. She greeted him with a chilling revelation. She had dreamt of his arrival 3 days earlier, and she knew he had come to take her secrets. Reluctantly, Miron Aku performed a ritual, summoning the spirits of her ancestors. But when Bose played back the recording, she was horrified. She believed that capturing her sacred chants had committed an unforgivable sacrilege, robbing her of her magical powers. By summer's end, Grunhagen's team had collected over 100 recordings. These were more than relics of a vanishing world. They were pieces of a puzzle Himmler believed could unlock the secrets of the Aryan past. Back in Berlin, the SS eagerly awaited the results, convinced that Karelia's ancient wisdom could serve the Third Reich.
Tibet. Reich. Tibet on a cold January morning in 1939. 5 unusual figures entered the ancient city of Lhasa, Tibet. They stood out, young white men in Western clothing that presents stark against the backdrop of the vibrant Tibetan streets. Led by Ernst Schaefer, they paid their respects to local leaders and mingled with the populace, their demeanor friendly, their smiles masking a darker truth. These men were emissaries of Heinrich Himmler. Ernst Schaefer's connection to the Nazis began years earlier when his passion for exploration found an unlikely benefactor in Himmler. While Schaefer had little interest in Nazi ideology, his desire for scientific discovery and the promise of funding led him to collaborate with the SS. Himmler's goals for the mission were far-reaching and sinister. Officially, the expedition was a scientific and anthropological exploration. Schaefer's team was tasked with studying Tibet's flora, fauna, and people, meticulously documenting their findings. But beneath this academic facade lay the Nazis' real interest. Some Nazi theorists believed that Tibet might hold clues to the origins of the Aryan race, and Schaefer's team was instructed to gather anthropological data, including physical measurements and facial casts of the Tibetan people, in hopes of finding evidence to support these theories. There was also a geopolitical dimension. The Nazis recognized Tibet's strategic location in Asia and saw potential in establishing ties with the region. Himmler envisioned the possibility of aligning Tibet with the Axis powers or using it as a base for anti-British sentiment in the region. Initially, the British authorities in India, suspicious of the Nazi agenda, barred the expedition from crossing their territory. However, through political maneuvering, Schaefer and his team managed to enter the semi-autonomous region of Sikkim in 1938, setting the stage for their journey into Tibet. Over the next year, Schaefer and his men traveled through Sikkim and Tibet, documenting everything they encountered. They were particularly fascinated by the Tibetan use of the swastika, a symbol of luck in Tibet, but one that had been co-opted by the Nazis. By the time the team returned to Germany in 1939, they had amassed a trove of samples, measurements, and drawings. Schaefer presented these findings to Himmler, who was so impressed that he envisioned a new mission to return to Tibet and organize a pro-German army to challenge British power in India. This plan never materialized, but Schaefer was rewarded with his own department within the Ahnenerbe Heba in 1943.
Tiwanaku. In 1928, a tall, sunburnt German named Edmund Kiss arrived to the ancient ruins of Tiwanaku in Bolivia. He was no ordinary traveler. Kiss was driven by a mission to prove a controversial theory that obsessed him. Tiwanaku, with its towering monoliths and intricate carvings, had intrigued explorers through centuries. Massive blocks, some weighing over 400 tons, lay scattered across the site, remnants of a civilization that once ruled vast regions of South America. For Kiss, these ruins were potential evidence to support the world ice theory, a pseudo-scientific idea that claimed Earth had experienced catastrophic events caused by colliding moons. A year before his journey, Giss had become a fervent supporter of Hans Herbinger's world ice theory, which proposed that such cataclysms had shaped human history. Desperate for proof, Giss contacted Arthur Ponsnowski, an Austrian expatriate living in Bolivia who had dedicated years to studying Tiwanaku. Ponsnowski believed that the city's origins were not indigenous, but the work of mysterious immigrants from the far west, possibly dating back 177,000 years, a timeline he based on his interpretations of astronomical alignments. Intrigued, Key traveled to Tiwanaku, funded by a prize he had won in a writing contest. For months, he studied the ruins, sketching floor plans and analyzing carvings. One artifact particularly fascinated him, a sculpture of a man's head, which Key claimed had distinctly Nordic features, reinforcing his belief in a superior Aryan origin for the site. He also observed what he interpreted as European influences in the architecture, further convincing him that Tiwanaku was the creation of Nordic men who had migrated to South America. He saw what he believed were Baroque-style doorways and Greek cross symbols, and dismissed any notion that indigenous people could have designed such a complex city. Key became particularly fascinated by the gateway to the sun, which Poznański had suggested was an ancient calendar. He believed the inscriptions represented a system with 12 months of 24 or 25 days, each day containing 30 hours, an idea he saw as proof of the world ice theory. He concluded that Tiwanaku must be millions of years old, built under different celestial conditions caused by a rapidly orbiting moon. Key's findings were eagerly published in Nazi Party newspapers, aligning with the regime's racist ideologies. Supported by the SS, he planned a return expedition to Tiwanaku in 1938, but World War II thwarted his ambitions. The eventual collapse of the Third Reich eventually relegated his theories to the fringes of history. Which of these missions was the most bizarre? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching Dark VOD. Like and subscribe to continue exploring the greatest mysteries of this world and beyond.